Hey everybody, it's Miss Wills. This is an instructional video for our grid project. This will involve you taking a picture from your camera roll, me putting a grid over top of it, you gridding your own paper, and then transferring the image step by step, just like we practiced together in our art notebooks. Just like our art notebooks, we have to start by gridding our paper out. Instead of every 1 inch though, this time we're going to be making marks around our paper at every 1.5 inches. I'll show you how to do that. First, what we're going to do is line our ruler up with the side of the paper. Our classroom rulers start at 0, so you can line the edge straight up. Mine does not. You notice the first main mark is here, so that's where I start lining it up. If you're confused, just line the edge up, and you should be fine with our classroom rulers. These are the places we're going to make marks at. If you would like to pause the video and look at this, and you know how to use a ruler, feel free. If not, I will show you where to make these marks. So, we're going to be making marks every 1.5 inch, like I mentioned. So that means that our first mark is not at 1 inch, but at 1.5 inches. So we're going to make a mark there. Now, I'm making these marks dark so that you can see them. Please do not make these marks dark on your own paper. As long as you can see them, they're dark enough. Our next mark is 1.5 inches past this. So 1/2 inch, 1 full inch. Our next mark is at 3. After that, our next mark is at 4.5. So halfway between 4 and 5 here. Then at 6. Then at 7.5, 9, and 10.5. So that is a mark every 1.5 inches. You're going to repeat this on the bottom side of your paper as well. So we're going to slide our ruler down, line it up at the bottom. I'll mark it 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5, 9, and 10.5. And there we go. Again, you do not have to make these marks dark. As long as you can see them, you're good. We're also going to do this along the short side of our paper. So I'm going to line my ruler up, just like this. And obviously, we're not going to have as many marks as on the long side, because logic. But we're going to put the marks at the same places. So again, just like on our list, ignore the cat hair flying off of this. 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, and 7.5. And that's as far as we'll get. So 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, and 7.5. And since our side is shorter, we won't go all the way. And you're just going to repeat this on the opposite side as well. So I'm going to line my ruler up. 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, and 7.5. Now, once we've gotten here, just like in our art notebooks, we're going to connect opposite sets of lines in order to form a grid. It's extremely important here that you do not make these lines dark. At the end of this project, we're going to be erasing the entire grid, which means you don't want it to show up at the very end. And if you draw too dark, it will definitely show up. Just like we did in our art boot camp, remember that we need to have the ruler touch both points that we want to connect. If you can only see one of those points, like this, your line is going to be not correct. This project requires you to be pretty precise with this step, so just take your time. I can see the mark here. I can see the mark here. I'm going to take my pencil and just lightly draw across. These lines need to be erasable. Do not press hard here. I'm going to go ahead and do that for every pair of lines, meaning all of my lines that go up and down, and all of my lines that go across like this. And I will meet you back here once that is all done. And here we are. We've got all our grid lines done. We connected these. You can tell they're very precise. You're going to need this precision for this project. Otherwise, things are going to bite you in the butt later. So just be precise now, rather than having to go back and redo it, because I will tell you to redo it if your grid doesn't work. What we're going to do now is label this grid. Just like in our art notebooks, we're going to use kind of a bingo board method where we've got letters across one side and numbers down the other, and then we can reference what square we're on by, like, C3 or D4. Depending on how your picture is laid out, you're going to label a little bit differently. If your picture is correct when it's in landscape view, this is landscape, so long ways is landscape. This we call portrait. If your picture is a landscape picture, a long picture, you are going to label with letters across the top and numbers down the bottom. I'm going to show you how to do that. So this is if your picture is in landscape. If it's not, skip ahead. You're going to start with A, B, and write lightly here. C, D, E, F, G, and H. Okay? And then you're going to go 1. 1, notice, is in the same box as A, just like our art notebooks. And 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. If your picture is in landscape, make your grid look like mine. If your picture, however, is in portrait, what we're going to do is, first of all, turn our paper facing the correct way. I know you can't see all of mine, but pretend you can. And instead of letters across this long side, we're doing letters across the short side here. So this corner becomes A, then B, C, D, E, and F, just like that. And then across, not across, but down the long side, here's where we're going to do our numbers. So again, A and 1 in the exact same box. Then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So if your picture is long ways, up and down, what we call portrait, you're going to label your grid like mine is now. This is how my picture is that I'm going to do as an example. So I'm going to keep my paper like this. Now, your grids are going to be printed out. However, I have mine on my computer right now, so I will be putting what I'm looking at beside this video for you to reference as well. Remember, this works like a bingo board. Your grid is labeled the same way as your gridded paper is. So if I'm looking at square A1 on my paper, then I'm looking at square A1 on my grid over here. We could see that there's nothing in A1 or B1 or C1 or F1 or A2 or F2, F3. If there's nothing in those boxes in your picture, there's nothing that you need to do in those boxes. What we're going to do is, just like our art notebook, we're going to focus on one single box at a time. I don't want you to get overwhelmed with the whole picture at once, because that's just going to freeze you. Instead, we're going to look at one single box. So I'm going to zoom in here on B2, which is for me, over to B, down to 2. In this square, we can see the corner of my cat's ear. This is my cat, by the way. You guys know this. And that's all I'm going to draw. We're focusing on contour lines for this project. So again, don't worry about detail, shading. Worry about detail, but don't worry about teeny, minuscule details. Worry about just the outlines of the major parts. I'm going to look at where the lines start on the edges of the grid square. So I can tell that her ear comes a little bit over halfway here. And about here on the sides. What I'm looking at is this point and this point. Then I'm going to look for this point here. Now, if it helps you, you can always imagine that extra grid is there. That's going to help me a lot. So if I divide this in half, imagine that there's a line there. The little tip of her ear is about halfway up that mini square that would be here. So if I were to imagine that there's like a line here, I'm saying that her ear is about this height. Now, it's not all the way at the edge. We can see that there's this little gap here. So I'm going to go a little in, and there's kind of where I'm imagining the tip of her ear will end up. What I've given myself here is basically a connect the dots. If you think back to when you were a kid, all you have to do is draw the proper lines between. Her ear is mostly straight lines between these points. So that's what I'm going to draw. Now remember to continue drawing lightly, because if we draw too dark and then we need to erase, which you will later, then you're screwed. So draw light. I also see that there's a little bit of detail on her ear here, right there. There's kind of an extra line here. So I'm going to add that in. And for right now, I could see there's some difference in shading here, but for right now, that's all I'm going to do with that square. I've gotten the major details, and that's it. I might round this out a little bit. I can tell by looking at my picture that it's not quite as pointy. It's a little bit rounded, but that's about it. And that little mini grid line that I drew in earlier, since I drew it so light, just goes straight away. This is the process you're going to continue to do for the entire rest of your grid project. You will have, because you have your grids printed out, I will have a viewfinder for you that will isolate one square at a time so that you're not having to focus on this whole thing. Your brain is going to want to, but you cannot. It will mess you up. Let's go down to, let's find a good hard one to do. All right, B7. B7. So that's right here on my picture. That's going to be right here on my paper. There's a lot of things going on in this. There's a hair tie here. There's a piece of twine. This is where I keep my cat's toys. She's resting in it. I'm not going to care what any of this is. All I care about is the lines that make it up. So let's just start with something big. Remember, big things first, details second, always. So here's a line right here. There's actually two of them. It'll be the outline on this side, the outline on that side. All I care about is the contours of those biggest pieces first. So, starts about, oh, wrong square. Always double check what square you're in, because you might make a mistake like I almost did. Starts about here, that hairband, I'm looking at this point. I'm actually going to go a little bit closer to the edge. This is what I'm talking about, right here. And then it goes kind of up towards the side and then kind of bends at the top a little bit, kind of like this. There we go. Now, I see that it comes back down right here, and it does go behind this piece of twine, so I'm going to just imagine that twine is non-existent right now. And it hits the edge of that grid square about here. So there's a point. Here's a point. It doesn't really go above this grid line here at all. It kind of just curves right there. So if I say that's a point, that's a point, that's a point, just like with the ear up here, boop, boop, I'm going to play connect the dots here. Curve around. And now I just connect back here. I know I need to make this line rounded because, well, first of all, I know it's a hair tie, so it's round. But most of all, I'm just looking at it and I can tell it's not just a boop, straight line right there. I need to do the inner side of this hairband as well, which is just a matching curve. It's just smaller. So I'm going to check where it starts. It's about that wide in the picture. And I'm going to follow this. Apologies if you can hear my cat in the background. I had to evict her for this video. Notice I'm sketching lightly. That way I can erase anything I don't need later. And there we go. We've gotten that curve in there. Big things first, small details second. Now I'm going to check out this piece of twine right here. Again, it is twine, but just think of it as lines for now since we're only seeing this much. This piece of twine touches this inside point of the hairband right here, and then it goes a little less than halfway is where it's going to meet the side of the grid. So if I imagine that this is halfway, right about here, I could see that it's a little bit lower than that point. Point A, point B, we're just going to connect the dots. Now, to me, that does not feel right, and that's because I connected it with the halfway point like a goofball instead of below, like I literally just said out loud. That feels much better. Looks much better, way more correct. I noticed that this slope was way not as steep. And just like the hairband, it is like a 3D object, so I'm going to outline the bottom of it as well. We can see that at the top, the bottom, and the hair tie is behind it. Bada bing, bada boom, easy peasy. Trying to figure out what this thing is back behind this. I think it's another part of the piece of twine, but I really only care about that line, and it's like right here to right here. I know that's very non-specific, but it's kind of in this zone. Maybe even a little bit, definitely a little bit lower than that. Always go back and check between your boxes. Don't just decide on something and then pretend that that's the answer. Double check always. We can kind of see the bottom of it right there, and it doesn't come out the other side, so we don't have to worry about doing anything there. Now there's some patterns on the hairband. When we talked about contour line, I made sure to mention that contour line doesn't always just mean the outline of the very outside like we did here. It means the outline of the major parts. So I'm going to look at this as a major part because I can see it. It's big, it's bold, it's there. And I'm just going to start drawing those in. This is about halfway up the square. So if I imagine halfway is about there, this is where that first little tie-dye pattern kind of looking thing on this hairband is going to be. And the great thing about tiny little like organic details like this is that if I get it a little bit wrong, as long as I get it mostly right, it will look right. So this might not be exactly perfect, but as long as I get it majority right, it's going to look correct. There's another one down here. This honestly goes lower than what I put it. If we look at the grid square, that's like below that second line of twine, and I had it ending way above it. So we're going to open that out a little bit, make it bigger, not smaller. And that is much better. So now I'm going to focus on this little one. It's kind of just hanging out right there. And there we go. And that piece of twine does, I believe, go, yes it does, in front of the hairband. So there we go. So now I can start looking up here. I'm going to go a little bit faster now that we've kind of gotten the hang of this. I see one here. And if you see me going faster, this does not mean you have to move faster. You got to remember that I've been doing this for a long time and you have not, and that is okay. And I'm going to move faster because I'm more practiced. Kind of a line there to show that the hairband wraps. And we've got some details here. I'm not going to finish this entire square because I think you've got the idea, but this is how the whole process is going to work. Square by square by square. Now, I'm going to show you what to do if you get to a part that's a little bit more complex and you're thinking, how am I supposed to get all of that detail in there? So we're going to move to square B5 right here, and you're going to notice that it's got the edge of her fur in this. And I mentioned we're doing contour line. We're not adding texture yet. We're not adding shading. So how am I going to show this without adding too much detail? What I'm going to do is I'm going to look for just the basic biggest shapes as we go around. So mostly this is kind of a straight edge right here. There's kind of a sticky out bit there. That's mostly straight, with a little bit of jaggediness to it. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with that big overall shape, getting it in the right place. It's right about here. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of that jaggediness where I see it in the picture. And I can have a little bit of fun with this. I don't have to be exactly precise to every single piece of hair, because again, that would be a little too much detail for this project. Unless you're well versed in it already, then, go off. But so that's about all that I would do. Once I zoom out on this and this becomes a full part of the picture, it's gonna look like fur, I promise. Right now it's kind of just a jagged line, but it'll all come together. I can also add, I could see some major divisions in her fur, so like this little V shape right here, little bit right there, and I can just add a couple little marks to show that, her fur is shaggy. I can even add in like a little hair if I want to. And that's the idea of this grid project. You're transferring an image from one place to another, working one square at a time. Do not get overwhelmed with this whole thing, because you'll get there eventually. If you go, oh crap, I don't know how to draw eyes. You don't know how to draw eyes, but you do know how to draw lines. Up, over, down. There's the top of an eye. Think of it just as lines. Don't panic. You've got this. See you on the other side.